upon the top management, whether it gives the leverage, whether it is flexible, open to ideas of acceptance of people. I mean, if an employee comes up with a new idea, some suggestions, whether the management is open with it, they are given that much leverage to implement it, or maybe here they follow the conservative management style where the employees are not given the leverage. So one of the part of it is the companies which are more open, which think from the perspective of managers, because even though see the top management comes up with the objectives, they formulate the objectives, but actually uh, the role played by functional managers is very significant, as they are aware about the ground realities. They are the ones who will be on the forefront to accomplish the objectives. So many of the companies, they opt for uh, promoting participation of the employees by implementing the management by objectives method. Here, it means that the management encourages the participative movement. It takes the views, opinions of the employees while making any decisions. Here, equal importance or priority is given to even the employees. Here, even their say is recognized. Now, through shared goal setting at all the organizational levels and performance assessment based on these objectives is done. So here, if the functional managers are there, when the company thinks of having the goal setting, formulates the goals or the objectives, these goals are passed on from top to bottom to reach the at the operational level where the operational managers are working and they are heading the responsibilities. Now these goals, they pass on from the top management to the bottom operational level managers, and the operational level managers also form a part of it, and they try to perform and give their best to achieve these objectives. So we say that management by objectives, it links the organizational objectives with the outcome of the employees or individuals. Now ultimately the outcome is the behavior of the employees towards the organization or towards achieving the outcomes. The more the employee is motivated and contributes to the betterment of the organization, more he is moving towards the achievement of the objectives. So we say that it also is a system that links the people, their planning with the performance, with their performance. So when the manager needs to assess, they assess in terms of outcome, that is what was required or what was expected and what is the reality. It is a powerful tool of implementation. Now this by objectives management by objectives involves establishing and communicating the organizational objectives. Unless and until the objectives are communicated to the employees, they will not understand them. Or maybe with the help of the resources, what are the resources available? Even the ideas is open to those employees to contribute in framing the objectives also, in establishing them also. Now, setting the individual objectives through the superior subordinate interaction, it helps implement organizational goals. That is, each and every individual department is responsible to accomplish the tasks which are set by the management. Now, uh, a periodic review performance is also carried out to check the expected outcomes or the set goals, what they were, and where exactly the organization is moving. Through performance appraisals, the management comes to know whether the particular employee has been able to map with the objectives. Now, management by objectives, it also provides an opportunity for the corporation to connect with the objectives of people at each level of those at the next level. Here we can say that management by objectives, it binds together, it ties together the corporate business and functional objectives as well as the strategies developed to achieve them. So we say that the principles of management by objectives, uh, they are also helping in self-managing work teams and also the quality circles. Now it depends upon the company. It is totally internal lookout for the company to consider the scope for the aspect of management by objectives here. Now this was one of the small point which was with reference to the cultural aspect or cultural part of the organization. Now coming to the next part, or we can say coming to the controlling part, that is the strategic control. Now basically the formulation takes place much ahead of the control part. The formulation, the implementation, and comes the role of the strategic control or operational control part. Now, uh, when one thinks of controlling the strategies, it becomes very difficult. One cannot think of stopping the ongoing process or the ongoing activities in the organization. And hence, always the periodic reviews are done so that a manager can think of mapping them. Now, whenever the company thinks of moving ahead with the strategies, it takes into account some of the factors, maybe like external factors, the environmental factors, I mean, or the internal processes of the organization. That is, we are speaking of either the strengths or overcoming the weaknesses. When especially the company think factors, there is some time frame which is lapsed between the current situation in which the organization formulates the strategy and exactly when the strategy is implemented. So there is a possibility that the scenario may change, maybe because today the government has come up with some new norms, the organization has formulated a strategy, and maybe when the time for implementation comes, it's seen that the scenario is totally changed. The factor which was the foundation or the basis for implementing the strategy itself has changed in totality, and hence there should be a check or control on it. So here the assumptions, based upon the assumptions, if one thinks of coming up with the strategies, it becomes difficult to change the strategy as the situations change, because these strategies are based upon some or the other assumptions. Now strategic controls, you can say they are the alarm bells, okay, where one can think of drifting the line of action which was planned. Now strategic control is more with reference to the strategies, and that is implement formulation, and operational control is with reference to the actions which are performed. Strategies are formulated while operations become a part of a processes which are implemented in the organization to through those strategies to achieve specific objectives. Now here, if one takes into account the process, it includes the strategic plan or the objectives which the company considers, and accordingly an organization or a company sets the uh, standards of performance with reference to that particular attribute or that particular variable. Some standards to be achieved are set in terms of performance, and a check is kept on the actual performance of what is actually happening. Now once the things are moving ahead, then there is the management of performance by analyzing if there is any gap or variance between the expected output and the actual output. So the first and foremost step here is with reference to setting of the standards. Now, why one thinks of setting the standards? Because otherwise, the manager cannot think of measuring the outcome. With what they will measure the outcome of the tasks? So here, while considering the standards, it may be the qualitative criteria which takes into account as far as the assessment goes. Now here, an organization can assess how it has performed as compared to the previous actions or previous processes in the organization, and it can also compare with the in other players in those industries, or one can compare with the competitors also here. Now companies usually measure the performance on the basis of criteria like profits, okay, what is the profits achieved, or the stock price in the market, or based upon the dividend rates, earnings per share, or return on capital, the growth in the sales, production cost, distribution cost, etc. So there are many indexes, or one can say many factors on which the quantitative criteria of performance measurement can be based upon. Apart from quantitative, the companies do have also the qualitative criteria. Qualitative, in terms of objectivity, the company is assessed for its performance based on the overall assessment with reference to objectivity. When the company assesses on the basis of capabilities, core competencies, their risk taking ability, the flexibility, and the workability, all these play a major role in terms of strategic management of the company. When it comes to measurement of performance, when it comes to measurement of the performance, the companies take into account the previous standards set as a benchmark against which the managers compare the actual performance during that present time frame. Now here one can think of measuring it by means of accounting or the communication systems also. Here the measurement part becomes much more difficult in terms of controlling, defining the objectives unless and until they are specific. Okay, one cannot think of assessing the outcomes with reference to these set objectives. So here, when one takes the timings of the measurement into account, measuring the before timing cannot serve the purpose. It is better one when one thinks of measuring it as a critical point of the particular tasks when they are performed. Also, the checking for standards further give rise to taking the corrective actions wherever the manager feels that there is a gap left out between what was expected and what is the actual performance here. uh, Given the time for the scope, the managers think of checking for the standards and revising the performances. Now, when the company thinks of checking for the performances, uh, there are many attributes for these outcomes, right from defining the organization structures, the systems, the behavioral implementation, the motivation provided to the employees, the overall culture of the organization. All these matters. There are many factors through which the performance of an employee is hampered. Structures are not in the appropriate manner to accommodate the employees, or the motivational styles are not that much enough. So here when one thinks of checking standards, the corrective actions becomes very essential. Now, when one thinks of the techniques to control the strategic evaluation, one can think of having the responsibility centers. The responsibility control centers where the revenue, the expense, the profit, and investment centers are considered. Each of the centers here, the output is measured in terms of the pros and cons with reference to their own predefined objectives. Now, here, when one thinks of the strategic leap control, it makes a significant change when the environment is relatively it's volatile, or when we say it's not much stable here. Now, coming to the evaluation techniques for the operational control are, when we say it's operational control, it's more or less related to internal analysis. We had seen the VRIO framework or the value chain analysis, where the financial and the non-financial attributes were dealt. So when it comes to internal analysis, if we consider the VRIO framework or the value chain analysis, the focus should be on meeting the ends. Meeting the ends means satisfying the customer and deriving the profits. That is the ultimate aim of any organization. So when the company thinks of satisfying the customer, there are many variables which goes into it. All the departments strive hard. They carry out an integrated approach to satisfy the customer. Each and every department has their own objectives, and they, from their side, are striving hard to win the hearts of the customers so that the customer uh, does not jump to a competitor product, to the competitors. Now, there are also audits carried out when we speak about the controls. The corporates have the corporate audit systems also in terms of the financial terms as well as the environmental audit, the social audit. So there are different audits, and the companies, the managers have to take the cognizance of these different aspects of the audit part. And nowadays, because of the government rules and regulations, the laws have become more stringent, especially the environmental audit. The social audit is basically the voluntary participation of the organization, as they owe something to the society in return, because as the society exists, the society is there. That's why the organizations, they are moving, they are working. Otherwise, if they are left out, left alone, the things will not work. If the people will not purchase the product, the businesses will not survive. Similarly, one of the assessment tools for these organizations is the balance scorecard. Balance scorecard, it's a tool which help the strategic leaders to assess the organization. Now, here, if you see, there are four perspectives: the financial perspective, the customer perspective, the internal business processes, and the learning and growth phase. Now, here, the basic challenge for the strategic leaders, they face the challenges in terms of verification that their firm is emphasizing on the financial and strategic controls so that firm performance improves. The balance scorecard is a tool which helps the strategic leaders assess the effectiveness of the controls. The balance scorecard is a framework firms which can use to verify that they have established both strategic and financial controls to assess their performance. Now here, this tool or a technique is more significant when dealing with business level strategies. However, it can also be used with other strategies where the firms may choose to implement, maybe the corporate level, or when the firm thinks of crossing the national borders, that is in terms of international strategies. Now here, the basic crux of this balance scorecard is that firms jeopardize their performance possibilities when financial controls are emphasized at the expense of strategic controls. Now, many a times, just to beat the competitors, or to win the competitors' customers, the company comes up with certain strategies. For the timing, the company may be able to grab the market share, or uh, is successful in switching the customers from the competitor's product to the company's product. But in the long term, in the long range, such steps might prove to be uh, wrong in terms of profits, or the market share, or customer satisfaction. So, in financial controls, the feedback about the outcomes achieved from the past actions, but it does not communicate the drivers of future performance. So, here the over emphasis on financial controls has the potential to promote managerial behavior, which makes the firm sacrifice the firm's long-term value creating potential for just gaining the short-term significant goals. So it's a trade-off for the managers. And hence, while designing the strategies, it should be a serious matter. One should not just take the decisions or define the strategies on impulse. An appropriate balance of the strategic controls and financial controls, rather than overemphasis on the other, it creates the scope for the companies to assess their performance. Now here, if you see in the figure, there are four perspectives which are integrated to form the balanced scorecard. these are the foundations or the framework model is based. Hello. So here, in financial terms, okay, if one takes into account the finances, it is concerned with the cash flow of the organization. How the companies think of generating the cash flow, how can the company raise the financial assets, the finances. It is concerned with the profitability and the risk from the shareholders perspective. How much would be the return on equity or the return on investments is the concern of the organization. Based upon this, there are many things at stake: the firm's profits, the investors' money. So the finance is a very important part here, and it is one of the major which defines the status of the organization in terms of performance. Uh, Basically, we say that the organization, if they are more focus oriented towards the profit, okay, the growth is guaranteed, the sustainability is guaranteed. What does this mean? That the companies assess the financial performance of the organization here. Now this is the basic analytical reasoning. Now in the traditional mindset or from the traditional perspective, this was only the framework upon which the companies used to build the strategies. Now, as the time progressed, the other aspects started gaining the importance. Like the next part is the customer. Now, here, as the competition started increasing, the focus of the company shifted from just deriving profits or making profits to considering the key and high profits, otherwise not. And hence, customers started, the focus shifted from the finance to the customers. And hence, the terms like customer satisfaction, customer care, customer value became significant. Next is the internal business processes. With the more focus on the priorities or with the more emphasis on business processes, which was more relevant from the point of financial satisfaction or financial performance. And hence, this factor was given due weightage. Also, the learning and growth, which is concerned with the firm's effort to create a climate which supports the innovation part, the growth of the employee in terms of learning and organization development. So the balance scorecard model, it allows the firm to understand from the financial perspective, from the customer's point of view, from the processes and from the learning and growth perspective. So the when the company thinks of the strategic controls, it thinks of measuring the performance in terms of these four attributes or four areas. Now here, the financial performance, as far as the financial performance considered, it's very easy to measure the outcome or assess this outcome, because by having a look at the movement of cash flow, the generation of cash or the investments made, maybe with the help of the financial statements, it becomes clear to understand the status of the financial position of the organization. But when it comes to certain terms like customer perspective or internal perspective, okay, these are internal to the organizations. Learning and a growth perspective. All the other three, here the people should be motivated. They should imbibe in themselves the sense of belongingness to the organization, so that they can give their 100% to the organization and give justice to the job roles. Now, firms use different criteria to understand and measure their standing relative to the scorecard's four perspectives. Some of the firms may give more weightage to the financial aspect, while the other firm may give the emphasis or lay the foundations for the customers. So it depends upon the particular organization or the company what they consider to be more important. All the four aspects are a part of the system, but still, out of these four, which of the criteria gets the boost or maybe is focused, it depends upon the organization. Now, the role of strategic players or leaders is more important here, because they determine somewhere the strategies. They have to seek the proper balance between both of them, the strategic control as well as the financial control. Now, here, even corporate structures play a vital role. Many a times we had seen about the corporate structures. The companies go for restructuring, designing of the restructuring to focus the firms on its core business, thereby allowing the top executives to again think about the strategic control of their different business units. Now, this is possible when the companies have the uh, set business as a separate entity or a separate strategic business unit. Now, it depends upon the particular organization whether to promote the use of strategic control and the leverage. If one checks into the various attributes of maybe with reference to the learning and growth, the organization can think of opting or coming up with the innovative idea. The company can think of launching new products. They may get the idea from the innovator or the early entrant in the organization and may try to implement the same formula. So here the company should think about uh, increasing the employee skills or a specialized skill set which the employees hold. Hello. So this lays the foundation to check the key performances with reference to the financial perspectives or with reference to the uh, understanding of the customer. Also, when one company thinks of internal business processes, it takes into account the asset utilization also. It thinks of boosting the employee morale, the changes in terms of turnover rates. So, from all the angles, the company thinks of assessing the organization or measuring the outcomes based upon these assessments. Now here, individual managers are given the roles and responsibility. The finance manager, the CFO, he looks after the uh, responsibility from the financial perspective point of view. For the customers today, companies are taking more efforts to come up with the separate departments which focus just on the customers. You will see today more of the companies or most of the companies, they do have their own customer care departments wherein they continuously address the queries of the employees or the doubts or complaints are addressed by these organizations. Today the companies cannot afford to let the customer go. Now here in terms of the customers, many a times a customer seeks the customization of the offering. So it's the role of the manager to satisfy the customer by presenting the customer the option of customization with reference to that product. Now, any doubts up till here?
No, ma'am.
In terms of learning and growth, it depends upon the organization how much scope the organization gives to the employees in terms of learning new technology, coming up with
Ma'am,
some new
sorry to
concept.
interrupt you.
Yes.
Ma'am, your screen is not visible.
Okay. Actually, I was discussing the balance scorecard part. Okay, where there are four attributes considered. Now, when one thinks of learning and growth, most of the companies today, they motivate the employees to learn something new. Companies spend huge amount to train the employees. They think of improving the internal processes with the help of innovations. Many new products are launched. Many new ideas are generated. Now, if we consider the pandemic scenario, many of the organizations have come up with the innovative ideas with the help of technology by opting for the digital mode. So here they are changing the process part. They are coming up with the innovative processes. Now, when the company thinks of coming up with such type of strategy, these strategies define the core competencies of the organization. And also here, when the companies are designing the core competencies or the strategies, they are comparing the competitors, where the competitor lies and what the company is offering. So in some way or the other, the company is thinking about enhancing itself or upgrading itself, to be more precise, upgrading itself. So when the company assesses the organization in terms of these four attributes, it becomes much more simpler and easier for the companies to assess and understand where they stand in the market, maybe with reference to their internal core competencies or with reference to the competitors. So this is about the last part of this chapter. In the next session, we would start with the fifth chapter, which is with reference to the red ocean strategy and blue ocean strategies. Now, any doubts as far as today's session is considered? Management by objectives you had studied in the fundamentals of management. Okay, balance scorecard actually it is with reference to the assessment part or the measuring part of the performance. So today we will stop here. We will continue in the next session. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.